All right. So, one day we're talking about new tariffs hitting pretty much everyone. And the next President Trump, well, he hits the pause button on most of them.
Right.
But then, kind of like almost an afterthought, tariffs on China, they jump way up to 125%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough to give you whiplash, right?
Absolutely. That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we're here to do today. Unpack all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
We're doing a deep dive on this for you. You guys have sent in a ton of material, news articles, analysis, even some pretty strong opinions from, online.
Oh, yeah. Social media has been blowing up.
Yeah, exactly. And our job is to kind of sift through it all and give you the essential insights, right? So you can really understand this unexpected policy shift, all the different reactions, and what this might mean moving forward.
Exactly. You're looking to understand, what's behind these decisions and where things might go next.
Right.
But you don't want to get lost in the, all the minute-to-minute stuff.
Yeah, all the noise.
Exactly. So we're going to break it all down for you, the market reaction, the politics, the economic takes, and the bigger strategic picture.
So let's dive right in and start with what was actually announced. We said most new tariffs are on hold for now 90 days. That's a big deal.
Yeah, huge.
But then you have this immediate spike to 125% on goods coming in from China, effective April 9th, 2025.
Right. And it's important to be clear here, right? These tariffs are on stuff coming into the U.S. from China.
Right.
Which basically makes those goods more expensive for businesses and, people like you and me.
Right, exactly.
So you can see how this instantly changes things for global trade,
Yeah.
That worry about tariffs hitting everyone is gone.
Yeah.
Now it's all about the U.S. and China, and that's already a complicated relationship.
Oh, absolutely. And the markets, they felt this shift immediately. Right after the pause was announced, global markets surged.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Shows how worried everyone was about those widespread tariffs.
Right, because that uncertainty about trade can really put the brakes on investment and growth.
Yeah.
So any relief, any sign that things might be okay, the markets, they love it.
But that good feeling, well, didn't last, did it? The very next day, April 10th, U.S. stocks took a hit.
Yeah.
NASDAQ down more than 3%. So that initial relief turned into like, wait a minute, what does this really mean? And we also saw the dollar weaken and Treasury prices go up.
Right. So it looks like investors took a closer look, and realized that even with the pause, the tariffs on China, plus the fact that the pause is temporary, it still means a lot of risk.
Yeah.
And those Treasury prices going up, well, that usually happens when people are nervous about the economy. It's like a flight to safety.
Right. Like I need to put my money somewhere safe.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it shows you just how connected everything is globally and how quickly things can change.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We even heard from a small business owner who said this tariff pause was like the final nail in the coffin for them, which proves the point that even when something seems good overall, it can have a real negative impact on individual businesses.
Right, because on the surface, a tariff pause sounds good, right?
Yeah.
But think about it. This business, they might have already taken a hit from the initial tariff threats. They might have changed their plans, spent extra money, and now this sudden shift, especially if they rely on anything coming from China, well, it could make things even worse for them.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk politics over on the Republican side. It seems like the main story they're telling is that this is all part of President Trump's, art of the deal approach.
Yeah, they're framing it as a strategic win.
Exactly. House Speaker Mike Johnson, he said, quote, "Behold, the art of the deal. President Trump has created leverage, brought many countries to the table, and will deliver for American workers, American manufacturers, and America's future," end quote.
Wow. They're not holding back.
No, they're not. It's all about how this gives the U.S. an advantage, right?
Right, and that word leverage is key. They're saying that by first threatening everyone with tariffs, Trump basically forced everyone to negotiate, and now he can ease up on some countries while keeping the pressure on China.
To get better deals for the U.S., right?
Exactly.
And Senator Chuck Grassley, he called Trump a, quote, great dealmaker.
Okay.
And said this pause brings more certainty and shows that things are moving in the right direction.
Well, I'm not sure everyone would agree about the certainty part, especially those businesses now dealing with much higher costs on Chinese imports, or those who are wondering, will this pause really last longer than 90 days?
Right.
So, yeah, maybe certainty is in the eye of the beholder here.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Senator Ted Cruz, who, he wasn't a fan of those broad tariffs. He actually praised this move.
Interesting.
He likes that it's focused on China and about getting a fair deal.
Right. So even within the Republican Party, there are different opinions. Some were okay with the tariffs, some weren't. But targeting China, that's something they can all agree on.
Yeah, because they're all concerned about, trade imbalances and all that.
Exactly.
And then you have Senator Rand Paul. He's taking a more practical approach. He said, quote, 10% tariffs are bad, but they're better than 60%, end quote.
Right. So for him, it's about damage control.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this isn't ideal, but it's better than what could have happened.
Right.
So you can see there's a range of views, even among Republicans.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have some big names in the business world who are big Trump supporters. They've chimed in, too. Bill Ackman, he called this brilliantly executed.
Wow.
And textbook art of the deal, he thinks this shows other countries what they could lose if they don't negotiate.
Right. So it's not just about the actual tariffs.
Yeah.
It's about sending a message.
Right. And David Sachs, who used to work for Trump, he said Trump has been, quote, vindicated.
Okay.
He says China's isolated now and other countries will be lining up to make deals with the U.S.
So he's saying this was a necessary shock to the system.
They're very strong words.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's the Republican view, basically. A smart strategic move. Now let's see what the Democrats are saying. And no surprise, it's a very different picture.
Yeah, you could say that.
They're basically accusing Trump of being reckless with the economy and not having a clear plan.
Yeah, that's more their style.
Senator Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
He didn't hold back at all. He said, quote, this chaos is all a game to Donald Trump. He thinks he's playing red light, green light with the economy, but it is very real for American families, end quote.
Oof. Yeah, he's saying this isn't some game. This is people's lives.
Right, and that red light, green light thing,
yeah,
that really gets at what the Democrats are worried about. It's the unpredictability.
Yeah, exactly.
Like businesses and people need to be able to plan, and this back and forth makes that impossible.
And it creates a lot of stress.
Totally. And then there's some serious concerns about whether this was market manipulation. Yeah. Senator Adam Schiff, he called these sudden policy changes, quote, dangerous opportunities for insider trading, end quote, and wants investigations into whether anyone profited from knowing this was coming.
That's a serious accusation.
Yeah, it is, because if someone knew about this change before it happened,
right,
they could have made a lot of money. And Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's also concerned. She wants anyone in Congress who's been trading stocks to show those transactions.
Right, it's about transparency.
Yeah, and she's been pushing for a ban on insider trading in Congress for a while now.
Because people need to trust that their elected officials are working for them.
Right, not for their own wallets.
Exactly.
And then House Whip Catherine Clark, she pointed out that Trump posted on Truth Social just hours before the announcement saying it was, quote, a great time to buy, end quote, stocks.
Interesting timing.
Yeah, she called that corruption.
So it makes you wonder, was this all planned?
Right.
Who benefited from this?
Yeah. And Representative Stephen Horsford, he went right at the U.S. Trade Representative during a hearing asking, quote, how is this not market manipulation, end quote, unquote. If it was always a plan, how is this not market manipulation who's benefiting? What billionaire just got richer, end quote.
Wow, he went right for the jugular.
He did, and the trade representative basically just denied it.
Well, yeah, but that's not going to make those concerns go away.
Right. And just to show you how skeptical the Democrats are, Senators Tina Smith and Brian Schatz, they both went on social media and were basically making fun of how inconsistent Trump's been with these tariffs.
Right. Like, they don't trust his motives at all.
Yeah, so you could see a clear division there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've heard from the politicians now. Let's hear from the economists and business folks.
Yeah.
What are they saying about the long-term impact?
Right, because it's not just about those initial market reactions. It's about what happens next.
Right, and Diane Swank, who's the chief economist at KPMG, she made a really interesting point. She said that even with the pause, the effective tariff rate is actually higher than it was before because of what's happening with China.
Oh, wow.
She even thinks it could reach 30.5%, which is worse than their worst-case scenario.
So the average tariff isn't lower, it's higher.
Yeah.
So this isn't really a pause.
Right.
It's more like shifting the focus onto China.
And that could have huge consequences for, global trade.
Absolutely, because we're not just talking about who gets a break and who doesn't.
Yeah.
It's the size of those tariffs that really matters. And when you hit a major player like China, well, that affects everyone.
And on the business side, we heard from Richard Branson. He's been a big critic of tariffs. Yeah. Called them a, quote, colossal mistake.
Yeah.
But he was happy about this pause. Called it a, quote, huge relief for the whole world.
Yeah. So for some businesses, this targeted approach is a good thing.
Right. It gives them some breathing room.
Yeah, at least for the next 90 days.
But, we can't forget that small business owner who said this was the final nail in the coffin for them.
Right.
It's a reminder that these big policy changes can really hurt some businesses.
Absolutely. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah. And another important point, China, they haven't backed down.
Yep.
Their retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, they're still in place at 84%. So even though we raised tariffs on them, they're hitting back.
Right. So this isn't over.
Not at all. And CNN reported that House Republicans, they've approved a budget blueprint.
Okay.
So even with all this tariff drama, other things are moving forward in Washington.
Right. Because trade is a big deal, but it's not the only thing happening.
Yeah. And this shows that the Republicans are, still united on some key issues.
Interesting.
So let's try to sum all this up. What are the strategic implications of this sudden shift in trade policy?
Well, from the Republican side, it seems like it's all about leverage, especially with China. They're saying this is a calculated move to force China to make concessions on trade.
Right. And they're giving other countries a break, maybe to encourage them to cooperate.
It's all very art of the deal.
Yeah, but the Democrats see it totally differently for them. This is chaos. It's harmful and maybe even corrupt.
Yeah.
They don't see a plan, just a bunch of unpredictable actions.
And they're worried about the economic fallout.
Right, because businesses need stability to grow, and this is the opposite of that.
And then you have those accusations of market manipulation, which, that doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. And the markets themselves, well, they're confused.
Yeah, that initial jump followed by a drop that says it all.
Right, they're trying to figure out what this focus on China means and whether this pause is actually going to lead to anything.
It's a lot of uncertainty.
So to recap, we have a pause on most new tariffs, but a big increase on China. The political reactions are totally different, and the markets are, they're nervous.
Exactly. We've got a very targeted action against China, a huge partisan divide, and a lot of economic anxiety.
So here's the big question. What does this all mean for global trade?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Will these next 90 days actually lead to real negotiations, or will things get worse?
Right, and how will this affect different industries and the prices we pay for stuff?
These are all things to think about.
Right, because the U.S.-China relationship affects everyone.
It does. So here's a final thought. Could this actually be a long-term strategy? A really unconventional art of the deal on a global scale? Or is it just a bunch of impulsive decisions that could end up hurting everyone?
That's a great question, and only time will tell.
It will. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.